What if I told you that the rise and fall of one of the greatest empires in history shaped everything we know today? From the epic battles of Roman legions to the building of monuments that still stand thousands of years later, the Roman Empire's story is filled with power, intrigue, and lessons that are still relevant in our modern world. Stick around until the end, because today we're diving deep into the untold secrets and incredible moments that define the Roman Empire and how its legacy lives on. You won't want to miss this journey through history. So hit that play button, and let's uncover the stories that built the foundation of our world. Chapter 1. The Legendary Foundations of Rome. The Myth of Romulus and Remus. The story of Rome's foundation begins with legend. According to Roman mythology, the city was founded by twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, who were said to have been raised by a she-wolf. Their mother, Rhea Silvia, was a Vestal virgin and daughter of King Numitor. Rhea's uncle, Amulius, had seized the throne of Alba Longa, where she was born. To prevent her from having heirs, he imprisoned her. However, she bore twins, and fearing they would rise against him, Amulius ordered them to be abandoned by the Tiber River. Yet, fate intervened as the twins were discovered by a she-wolf, who nursed them. Eventually, they were found by a shepherd named Faustulus, who, along with his wife, raised the boys. As they grew older, Romulus and Remus became strong and heroic figures. Eventually, they returned to Alba Longa, defeated Amulius, and restored the throne to their grandfather, Numitor. The twins then decided to establish their own city. Romulus chose a spot near the Tiber River, but a quarrel broke out between the brothers over the location. Romulus killed Remus and became the first king of Rome, naming the city after himself, Rome. This legendary tale highlights the violent and competitive spirit that would characterize the Roman people throughout their history. Early settlements and Etruscan influence. Historians believe that the real origins of Rome were much more practical. Rome began as a small settlement around the 8th century BCE, founded by a mix of Latin tribes on the Palatine Hill, one of the city's 7 hills. These early Romans were likely a mix of various peoples, including the Latins, Sabines, and Etruscans. The Etruscans, in particular, played a significant role in shaping early Roman culture. They influenced Roman religion, art, architecture, and even aspects of government. It was the Etruscans who introduced the practice of augury, interpreting the will of the gods through omens, and who influenced Roman architectural styles, such as the use of the arch in construction. The Romans also adopted many Etruscan gods and their religious practices. The Etruscans ruled over much of central Italy, and Rome was initially just one of many small towns under their influence. The rise of Latin tribes and early kings. As Rome grew, the city came under the rule of a series of kings, starting with Romulus. The early kings of Rome were chosen by the Senate, and their reigns were largely defined by their ability to lead in both war and peace. The kings were also responsible for establishing Rome's early laws and institutions. Numa Pompilius, the second king, is credited with organizing Roman religion and legal systems. Tullus Hostilius, the third king, expanded Rome through military conquest. Ancus Marcius, the fourth king, is thought to have founded the port of Ostia, which gave Rome access to the sea. These kings were not absolute monarchs, but worked in conjunction with a council of elders known as the Senate, which would later evolve into the Roman Senate. The transition from monarchy to republic. However, in 509 BCE, the monarchy in Rome came to an end. The last Roman king, Tarquin the Proud, was overthrown after his son, Sextus Tarquinius, committed a violent crime against a noblewoman named Lucretia. In the aftermath, Lucretia took her own life in protest, which led to a revolt. The Roman nobles, angry at the tyrannical rule of the Tarquins, decided to abolish the monarchy and establish a republic. The power shifted from the king to elected officials, such as consuls, who were selected annually. This marked the beginning of a new era in Roman history, one that would lay the foundation for the republic's expansion and eventual transition into an empire. The ideals of the republic, based on liberty, justice, and equality before the law, will become central to Roman identity and influence future generations. Chapter 2. The Roman Republic, a new form of government. The fall of the monarchy. In 509 BCE, the Roman monarchy came to a dramatic end. The last king, Tarquin the Proud, ruled with an iron fist, becoming increasingly unpopular with the Roman people and the aristocracy. His reign was marked by corruption, cruelty, and a sense of absolute power. However, it was not his actions alone that led to his downfall, but the injustice of his son Sextus Tarquinius, who committed a heinous crime. The story of Lucretia, a noble woman, is central to this turning point. After being violated by Sextus, Lucretia took her own life, leaving a deep impression on Roman society. Her tragic death sparked outrage and called for change. The Romans, led by Lucius Junius Brutus, decided to overthrow the Tarquin monarchy and establish a republic. This decision marked the end of Roman kingship and the beginning of a new political system. The structure of the republic. The Roman Republic was a complex system that combined elements of democracy and oligarchy. Unlike a monarchy, power in a republic was not concentrated in the hands of a single ruler. Instead, it was divided between elected officials, the Senate, and various popular assemblies. At the heart of the republic were the consuls, two officials elected each year who acted as both the heads of state and military commanders. They had significant power but were held in check by the Senate, a body of elite patricians who advised on matters of law and policy. In addition to the consuls and Senate, the popular assemblies gave Roman citizens a voice in electing magistrates and passing laws. The republic's political system was designed to prevent any individual or group from gaining too much power. The principle of checks and balances was fundamental, as power was meant to be shared and not centralized in one institution. Social struggles, the conflict of the orders. While the Roman Republic was based on the idea of shared power, it was not without its struggles. One of the most significant conflicts was the conflict of the orders, a social struggle between patricians, the wealthy aristocratic class, and the plebeians, the common people. The plebeians were initially excluded from holding political office, and they had little influence over Roman law. For much of the early republic, the plebeians had to fight for their rights, pushing for reforms that would grant them more political power. This struggle led to the establishment of the tribunes and plebs, who were elected to represent the interests of the common people. Over time, plebeians gained more rights, including the ability to marry patricians and hold political office. The 12 Tables, Rome's first set of written laws, were created during this period, ensuring that all Roman citizens, regardless of class, were subject to the same legal code. The conflict of the orders culminated in the eventual merging of the patricians and plebeians into a more unified Roman citizenry. Though class divisions will remain an ongoing challenge throughout Roman history, the expansion of the Republic. As the Roman Republic grew more stable, it began to expand its territory. Rome's military prowess and organizational structure allowed it to conquer neighboring territories and absorb them into its growing empire. The Republic's military was based on a system of legions, highly trained soldiers who were primarily Roman citizens. The Roman legions were effective not only in battle, but also in assimilating conquered peoples through alliances and granting them certain rights. Rome's early military victories were often the result of strategic alliances with neighboring tribes and cities. Over time, however, Rome's expansion became more aggressive, as it sought to control larger and wealthier regions. One of the Republic's most famous military campaigns was the conquest of Carthage during the Punic Wars, which established Rome as a dominant power in the Mediterranean. By the end of the Republic's expansion, Rome controlled vast territories, from the British Isles in the north to the deserts of Egypt in the south. This growth, however, brought challenges, particularly in managing such a large empire. The demands of war, the expansion of citizenship, and the need for new resources led to political instability, paving the way for future conflicts and the eventual transformation of the Republic into an empire. Chapter 3. The Punic Wars and Rome's Rise to Power. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE. The First Punic War was Rome's first major military conflict beyond its borders, and it set the stage for the Republic's expansion across the Mediterranean. In 264 BCE, Rome and Carthage, a powerful Phoenician city-state located in North Africa, found themselves in a fierce struggle for control of Sicily, a strategically important island in the Mediterranean. Carthage, with its formidable navy, was initially the dominant power at sea, while Rome was primarily a land-based power. However, Rome's military innovation and determination enabled it to build a formidable navy quickly. In the early stages of the war, Rome suffered significant defeats at sea, but the Romans adapted by designing the corvus, a boarding device that allowed them to transform naval battles into infantry engagements. This innovation turned the tide in Rome's favor. After more than 2 decades of conflict, Carthage was forced to surrender in 241 BC, ceding control of Sicily to Rome. This victory marked the beginning of Rome's rise as a dominant naval power, with Sicily becoming its first overseas province. The First Punic War showed that Rome, once a land-based power, was now prepared to expand its influence across the Mediterranean. The Second Punic War and Hannibal's invasion, 218 to 201 BCE. Rome's victory in the First Punic War did not go unnoticed by its enemies, and Carthage, seeking revenge, launched the Second Punic War in 218 BCE. This war would prove to be one of the most dramatic and challenging conflicts in Roman history, primarily due to the genius of the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca. Hannibal's tactics during the war would make him one of history's greatest military commanders. After assembling an army that included war elephants, Hannibal famously marched across the Alps into Italy, a feat that stunned the Romans. His strategic brilliance was demonstrated during the Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE, where he inflicted one of the worst defeats in Roman military history, encircling and annihilating an entire Roman army. Hannibal's victories in Italy put Rome on the defensive for years, as he won battle after battle, yet could not capture the city of Rome itself. Meanwhile, Rome regrouped under new leadership. The Roman general Scipio Africanus shifted the focus of the war to North Africa, launching an invasion of Carthage's homeland. In 202 BCE, at the Battle of Zama, Scipio decisively defeated Hannibal, forcing Carthage to sue for peace. The Second Punic War left Rome as the uncontested power in the western Mediterranean, but also revealed the vulnerability of the Roman military system and the growing internal tensions that would shape Rome's future. The Third Punic War and the destruction of Carthage, 149 to 146 BCE. While Rome emerged victorious from the Second Punic War, it had not fully extinguished the threat of Carthage. Despite being crippled by the war, Carthage remained a powerful economic force and a potential rival to Rome's growing empire. In 149 BCE, the Romans decided that Carthage must be completely destroyed and thus began the Third Punic War. The war was largely the result of Rome's desire to eliminate any potential threat from Carthage, despite the latter's compliance with Roman peace terms. The Romans laid siege to the city of Carthage, and after 3 years of brutal warfare, in 146 BC, they breached the city's walls. The Romans systematically destroyed Carthage, burning it to the ground and killing or enslaving much of its population. The land of Carthage was cursed and sowed with salt, symbolizing Rome's absolute victory. With the destruction of Carthage, Rome became the undisputed master of the Western Mediterranean, with no rival left to challenge its dominance. This victory secured Rome's power, but also marked the beginning of an era in which the Republic's increasing territorial expansion would eventually contribute to its downfall. Rome becomes the dominant power of the Mediterranean. By the end of the Punic Wars, Rome had firmly established itself as the dominant power in the Mediterranean. With Carthage destroyed, Rome turned its attention to other parts of the Mediterranean world, including Greece, the Eastern Mediterranean, and Spain. The wars with Carthage had not only expanded Rome's territory, but had also exposed the weaknesses in the Republic's military and political systems. As Rome grew in power, so did internal tensions. The wealth and land gained from its conquest fueled a growing divide between the elite patricians and the disenfranchised plebeians. The Republic's military was stretched thin, and the demands of constant war led to political instability. Rome's military success in the Punic Wars, however, was just the beginning. The Republic would soon face challenges that would test its political system to the breaking point, leading to the eventual rise of dictators and the transformation of the Republic into the Roman Empire. Chapter 4. The Age of Julius Caesar. The Fall of the Republic. By the 1st century BCE, Rome's once stable republic was beginning to show signs of strain. The Republic's system of government, based on a complex mix of elected officials, the Senate, and popular assemblies, had begun to break down under the weight of its territorial expansion, economic inequality, and military crises. The rapid growth of Rome's empire had created immense wealth for a few, but also a growing gap between the rich patricians and the poor plebeians. The political system was dominated by an elite class, leaving the majority of the population increasingly disenfranchised. Meanwhile, Rome's military generals, once loyal to the state, were now commanding personal armies, leading to greater political power struggles. This instability set the stage for a series of events that would mark the fall of the Republic and the rise of Julius Caesar, a man who would reshape Rome's destiny forever. Caesar's conquests and dictatorship. Julius Caesar's rise to power began in the Gallic Wars, a series of military campaigns that lasted from 58 to 50 BCE. Caesar, a brilliant general and a master of both politics and warfare, led Rome's forces to a series of victories in Gaul, modern-day France, and parts of Belgium, Switzerland, and Germany. His military genius and the immense wealth and resources he gained from his conquests made him incredibly popular among the soldiers and the common people of Rome. However, his growing power alarmed many in the Senate, who feared that Caesar might seek to become a dictator and end the Republic forever. In 49 BCE, Caesar famously crossed the Rubicon River with his army and acted defiance against the Senate's authority. This marked the beginning of a civil war between Caesar and the Senate, with Caesar's forces ultimately defeating his rivals. In 44 BCE, Julius Caesar declared himself dictator for life, effectively ending the Roman Republic. He implemented a series of reforms that centralized power, restructured the Senate, and provided land as veterans. Caesar also initiated plans for major public works projects and reformed the calendar, creating the Julian calendar, which is still used today. However, his increasing concentration of power and disregard for traditional Republican values alienated many in the Senate. The Ides of March, Caesar's assassination. Caesar's growing power and his disregard for the old Republican traditions ultimately led to his downfall. Many in the Senate, who viewed Caesar as a tyrant and a threat to the Roman system, plotted to assassinate him. On March 15th, 44 BCE, known as the Ides of March, a group of conspirators, including prominent senators like Brutus and Cassius, attacked Caesar in the Senate House. Despite warnings from his soothsayers, Caesar went to the Senate that day, where he was surrounded by his assassins. In a dramatic and tragic moment, Caesar was stabbed 23 times. His assassination was not just a personal tragedy, but a moment that signified the unraveling of the Republic itself. Caesar's death led to an immediate power vacuum, with political chaos ensuing in the wake of his assassination. The Republic, already weakened by internal divisions and military conflicts, was now in a state of crisis. Ironically, the conspirators who killed Caesar hoped to restore the Republic, but their actions only hastened the transition to a new, imperial system of government, the rise of the Second Triumvirate. Following Caesar's death, Rome was thrown into another series of civil wars. The power struggle between Caesar's supporters and those who opposed him culminated in the formation of the Second Triumvirate, an alliance between Mark Antony, Octavian, Caesar's adopted heir, and Marcus Aemilius Lepidus. The triumvirs sought to consolidate power and avenge Caesar's death, eliminating their enemies in the Senate and securing control over Rome. The triumvirate's enemies, particularly those loyal to Brutus and Cassius, were defeated in a series of battles, culminating in the Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE. The victory at Philippi solidified the power of the triumvirs, but tensions soon arose among the three men. The alliance eventually broke down due to personal ambitions and rivalries. Mark Antony's relationship with Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, further alienated him from Octavian, leading to a final confrontation. In 31 BCE, the Battle of Actium saw Octavian's forces decisively defeat Antony and Cleopatra's fleet. Antony and Cleopatra both committed suicide, leaving Octavian as the uncontested ruler of Rome. Octavian's victory marked the end of the Republic and the dawn of the Roman Empire under the name Augustus. The fall of the Republic, marked by Caesar's rise and death, had ultimately given way to a new, centralized form of government, one that would reshape the course of Roman history for centuries to come. Chapter 5. The Roman Empire under Augustus and the Pax Romana. The rise of Augustus, 27 BCE. After the tumultuous period following Julius Caesar's assassination, Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and heir, emerged as the victor in the civil wars that racked Rome. In 31 BCE, Octavian decisively defeated Mark Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium, securing his position as the undisputed ruler of Rome. In 27 BCE, Octavian formally consolidated his power, renaming himself Augustus, meaning the revered one. Augustus cleverly presented himself not as a monarch, but as the princeps first citizen, maintaining the illusion of the republic while holding absolute power. Through careful political maneuvering and reforms, Augustus was able to establish a strong central government. His reign marked the beginning of the Roman Empire, and the transformation from a republic to an imperial system was complete. Augustus laid the foundations for the empire that would last for centuries, and his leadership initiated a period of relative stability that would be called the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. The reforms of Augustus. Augustus implemented a series of reforms aimed at strengthening the empire and securing his rule. One of his most significant reforms was the establishment of a professional standing army, replacing the previously unreliable and sometimes rebellious citizen militia. Augustus created the Praetorian Guard, an elite force tasked with protecting the emperor. He also reformed the administrative structure of the empire, dividing it into provinces governed by imperial appointees. This allowed him to exert greater control over the far-reaching corners of the empire. Augustus also introduced legal reforms, such as the Lex Julia, which sought to promote moral behavior and encourage marriage and childbearing among the Roman elite. In addition to legal and military reforms, Augustus focused on infrastructure, overseeing construction of roads, aqueducts, and public buildings that would improve Rome's urban landscape and the lives of its citizens. The rebuilding of temples and the establishment of monuments, such as the Era Pacis, symbolized Augustus' claim to restore peace and stability to the Roman world. The Pax Romana, a period of stability. The reign of Augustus ushered in a period known as the Pax Romana, which lasted for approximately 200 years. During this time, Rome experienced unprecedented stability and prosperity. The borders of the empire were secured, and while there were occasional conflicts, there were no major wars that threatened the empire's integrity. The Pax Romana allowed for the development of Roman culture, trade, and infrastructure on an unparalleled scale. Roman roads connected the vast empire, facilitating trade, communication, and military movement. The Mediterranean became a hub of commerce, and Roman law was spread throughout the empire, bringing a degree of uniformity and order. The economy flourished during this period, and the arts and literature, encouraged by Augustus, saw a resurgence. Writers like Virgil, Ovid, and Horace became central figures in Roman culture, with Virgil's Aeneid becoming a national epic that glorified Rome's origins. The Pax Romana also enabled the development of Roman architecture, with monumental structures such as the Colosseum, the Pantheon, and the Forum of Augustus becoming symbols of Rome's grandeur and its imperial ambitions. The imperial succession and challenges to Augustus' rule. While Augustus' reign was largely successful, it was not without its challenges. One of the most significant issues was the question of imperial succession. Augustus, having no natural heirs, adopted several potential successors, including his stepson Tiberius, who would ultimately succeed him. The question of succession remained a challenge for future emperors, as the imperial system did not have a clear process for the peaceful transfer of power. Augustus' personal life also faced difficulties, particularly the scandal surrounding the actions of his daughter, Julia, whose political alliances and moral behavior became a source of tension in the imperial family. Despite these issues, Augustus' reforms and his consolidation of power allowed the empire to continue functioning with relative stability. His death in 14 CE marked the end of an era, but the system he established continued to shape Roman governance for centuries. His legacy as a founder of the Roman Empire was cemented, and he was deified by the Senate, becoming a god in the eyes of the Roman people. The legacy of Augustus. Augustus' reign left a lasting impact on Rome and the world. The Roman Empire, under Augustus, became a dominant global power, and its political and cultural influence spread far beyond its borders. Augustus not only transformed Rome into an empire, but also created a foundation for future emperors. His reforms in government, military, law, and culture provided the stability necessary for the empire to thrive. Augustus also reshaped the way emperors would rule, using propaganda and careful political maneuvering to maintain power, while keeping the appearance of republican traditions. The imperial cult, the worship of the emperor as a divine figure, became central to Roman political life, and it was during Augustus' reign that this practice took root. His reign marked the peak of Roman imperial success, and his influence can still be seen in the political structures of modern governments. Augustus' vision for Rome set the stage for the long-lasting Roman Empire, ensuring that his reign would be remembered as one of the most significant in world history. Chapter 6: The Expansion of the Roman Empire and the Challenges of Governance. The empire's expansion under successive emperors. After Augustus, the Roman Empire continued its expansion under his successors, reaching its peak territorial extent by the 2nd century CE. Under Trajan, who ruled from 98 to 117 CE, the empire expanded to its greatest size, stretching from the British Isles in the northwest to the Near East and North Africa in the south and east. Trajan's military campaigns, particularly his conquest of Dacia, modern-day Romania, significantly added to the empire's wealth and resources. Trajan's conquest not only provided vast amounts of gold, but also expanded Roman influence into the Carpathian region, a key strategic area in the empire's eastern frontier. Other emperors, such as Hadrian 117 to 138 CE, focused on consolidating and securing the empire's borders, notably building the famous Hadrian's Wall in Britain to mark the northernmost frontier. The empire was at its zenith during this time, both territorially and economically, as Roman peace and law spread across the Mediterranean and beyond. While expansion continued in some areas, emperors like Hadrian understood the importance of maintaining stable borders and not overextending the empire's military resources. The challenges of governing a vast empire. As the Roman Empire expanded, so did the challenges of governance. The sheer size of the empire posed a significant administrative burden. The Roman government had to manage a vast and diverse population spread across 3 continents, each with its own local customs, languages, and economies. Emperors relied on a network of provincial governors, military commanders, and local elites to maintain control over their territories. Despite the system of delegation, the coordination of resources, communication, and law enforcement across such a large area was difficult. Emperors also faced the challenge of integrating newly conquered peoples into the Roman system, ensuring loyalty and preventing rebellions. The Roman military, once an instrument of expansion, had to constantly defend the borders from external threats, including invasions by Germanic tribes, Parthians, and other enemies. Additionally, local uprisings, such as the Jewish revolt in Judea, posed challenges to Roman rule. The growing complexity of governance, combined with the empire's size, would ultimately lead to political instability and internal divisions in later centuries. Economic prosperity and the spread of Roman culture. During the height of the empire, the Roman economy thrived. The empire's vast network of roads, ports, and trade routes allowed for the exchange of goods, ideas, and culture across its territories. Roman coins, standardized across the empire, facilitated trade and commerce, ensuring that Rome's economy remained unified. The Roman agricultural system, based on large estates and the labor of slaves, produced an abundance of food and raw materials, supporting the growing urban population. Cities like Rome, Alexandria, and Antioch became major cultural and economic hubs, attracting merchants, scholars, and artists from all over the known world. The spread of Roman law and the Latin language throughout the empire created a sense of unity and cohesion, helping to integrate diverse cultures into a common Roman identity. Roman art, literature, and architecture flourished during this period, with monumental structures like the Pantheon, Colosseum, and the Forum Romanum becoming symbols of Roman ingenuity and power. The Romans also adopted and adapted many aspects of Greek culture, particularly in philosophy, education, and art, as Roman civilization spread. So did Roman ideas, such as the concept of citizenship and Roman law, which would have a lasting influence on future legal and political systems. The crisis of the 3rd century. Despite the prosperity and stability of the 2nd century CE, the Roman Empire began to experience significant crises during the 3rd century. The empire was plagued by political instability, with a series of weak and short-lived emperors, known as the barracks emperors, who were often military generals supported by their troops rather than by the Senate. The frequent changes in leadership weakened the central authority, leading to a lack of continuity in governance. Additionally, the empire faced economic difficulties, including inflation, a devaluation of currency, and a decline in agricultural productivity. The empire's borders were also increasingly threatened by barbarian invasions, particularly by the Goths, Franks, and Persians who pushed into Roman territory. The military, once the backbone of the empire, was stretched thin by these constant invasions and the need to defend multiple frontiers simultaneously. Internal divisions, such as the rise of the Palmyrene Empire and the Gallic Empire, breakaway regions, further complicated the situation. The empire's unity seemed to be crumbling under the weight of these crises. The reforms of Diocletian and the division of the empire. In response to these crises, Emperor Diocletian, R. 284 to 305 CE, enacted sweeping reforms aimed at stabilizing the empire. One of his most significant actions was a division of the empire into two parts, the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. Diocletian took control of the eastern portion, while he appointed a co-emperor to govern the western half. This division was designed to make the empire more manageable and defendable, as the eastern half was wealthier and more urbanized than the western half. Diocletian also implemented economic reforms, including price controls and the introduction of new coinage to stabilize the economy. His military reforms helped reorganize the army and strengthen the empire's defenses. Despite these efforts, the division of the empire became permanent, with the Western Roman Empire continuing to face internal decay and external threats. The Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, would survive for another 1,000 years, while the Western Roman Empire would ultimately fall in 476 CE. Chapter 7. The Fall of the Western Roman Empire and the Legacy of Rome. The decline of the Western Roman Empire. The 5th century CE saw the slow but inevitable decline of the Western Roman Empire, which had been weakened by internal decay, political instability, economic troubles, and continuous barbarian invasions. One of the major factors in the empire's decline was its inability to address the growing pressure from external forces. Various Germanic tribes, including the Visigoths, Vandals, Franks, and Ostrogoths, began to encroach on Roman territories. The Huns, led by Attila the Hun, also posed a significant threat, pushing many of these tribes into Roman lands. The Roman military, once the most formidable in the world, had been weakened by constant wars and internal political strife. And by the 5th century, the empire was relying more heavily on mercenaries from these very barbarian tribes. The lack of loyalty and discipline among these foreign soldiers further eroded the strength of the empire's military. Politically, the Western Roman Empire was unstable, with a series of short-lived emperors who struggled to maintain control over an empire that was too vast and too fractured to govern effectively. The last Roman emperor of the West, Romulus Augustulus, was opposed in 476 CE by the barbarian leader Odoacer, signaling the official end of the Western Roman Empire. The fall of Rome, the sack of the Eternal City. A pivotal moment in the collapse of the Western Roman Empire came in 410 CE when the Visigoths, led by Alaric, sacked the city of Rome. This event shocked the Roman world, as Rome had stood as the undying symbol of Roman power and civilization for centuries. The sack of Rome was a dramatic indication that the empire was no longer invincible. Although the Visigoths did not completely destroy the city, they looted its wealth and carried off invaluable treasures. This marked the first time in over 800 years that Rome had fallen to a foreign enemy. For many Romans, this was a devastating blow to their sense of security and pride. Just a few decades later, in 455 CE, the Vandals, another Germanic tribe, would sack Rome again, further diminishing the empire's grandeur and authority. These events symbolize the crumbling of the Western Roman Empire, and by the time Romulus Augustulus was dethroned in 476 CE, the Western Empire had already ceased to function effectively as a unified political entity. The rise of the Byzantine Empire. While the Western Roman Empire fell, the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, continued to thrive for nearly 1,000 years after the fall of Rome. The Byzantine Empire retained much of the Roman governance structure, culture, and military organization. After the division of the empire by Diocletian in the 3rd century, the eastern half had been more resilient due to its wealth, strategic location, and strong leadership. The capital of the Eastern Empire, Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, became a hub of trade, culture, and learning. Under the reign of Justinian I, 527 to 565 CE, the Byzantine Empire experienced a brief resurgence as he sought to reconquer parts of the lost Western Roman Empire. Justinian's reign also saw the codification of Roman law into the Corpus Juris Civilis, which would influence legal systems in Europe for centuries to come. Despite facing external threats and internal struggles, the Byzantine Empire continued to exist as the Eastern Roman Empire until its fall in 1453 CE, when Constantinople was captured by the Ottoman Turks. The legacy of Rome. Though the Western Roman Empire fell, the legacy of Rome persisted in various forms throughout history. The Roman system of law, with its emphasis on justice, property rights, and legal equality, became the foundation for many legal systems in Europe and beyond. The Roman Republic's ideals of citizenship, civic duty, and participation in governance were adopted and adapted by later political systems, including those in medieval Europe and modern democracies. The Roman language, Latin, remained influential in the development of the Romance languages, such as Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian, and remained a language of learning, science, and the Catholic Church for centuries. Roman architecture, with its emphasis on engineering feats like roads, bridges, and aqueducts, influenced building practices throughout Europe. Iconic Roman structures, such as the Colosseum, Pantheon, and Roman Forum, continue to stand as symbols of Roman engineering and culture. Even the Roman army, once the mightiest force in the ancient world, became a model for future military organizations. The Roman Empire's cultural, legal, and architectural influence continued to shape European civilization long after its fall, marking Rome as a cornerstone of Western civilization. The fall and the rise of new powers. The collapse of the Western Roman Empire gave rise to a period of transition known as the Middle Ages in Europe. During this time, the remnants of Roman governance and culture would be carried forward by the Catholic Church, which became a unifying force in a fragmented Europe. The Holy Roman Empire, a confederation of territories in Central Europe, sought to revive the legacy of Rome, though its structure and leadership were far removed from the grandeur of the original empire. New powers, such as the Frankish Empire under Charlemagne, would rise in the post-Roman world, borrowing heavily from Roman traditions in governance, military strategy, and law. The fall of the Western Roman Empire also paved the way for the emergence of medieval kingdoms and the eventual rise of modern Europe, with its complex political, religious, and cultural developments rooted in the foundations laid by Rome. The history of the Roman Empire is one of grandeur, transformation, and ultimate decline, but its legacy continues to shape our world today. From the rise of Rome as a small city-state to its dominance over much of the known world, the Roman Empire not only built vast cities, roads, and monuments, but also laid the foundations of modern governance, law, and culture. The reign of Augustus marked the beginning of a golden age, the Pax Romana, where peace and prosperity allowed for advancements in trade, architecture, and the arts. However, as the empire grew, so did the challenges of maintaining control over such a vast territory. The pressures of external invasions, internal instability, and economic troubles led to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. But the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, carried on the Roman legacy for nearly 1,000 years more. Even after the fall of the West, Rome's influence endured through the Roman law, its language, and its monumental architectural achievements. The echoes of Rome can still be seen in our political systems, legal structures, and cultural ideals. The rise and fall of the Roman Empire serve as a powerful reminder of the fragility of even the mightiest empires, and its lessons continue to resonate in our modern world. Thanks for watching this journey through history. Be sure to subscribe to Hidden History for more deep dives into the past, where we uncover the stories that shaped our world.